This is Game Philosopher, and yes, I got rid of that cringy mustache. But today, instead of doing little funny videos or anything like that, I am going to get back on my reading of Proclus and commentary on Proclus Elements of Theology. Where we left off was principle, or proposition 2, so I guess that means logical order, proposition 3. Now, one thing that we'll notice as we're reading this is that all these propositions all go together, and that's because it's all in logical order. And so, if one proposition is proven to be true, that means the next, and the next, and the next. And that's pretty much how arguments follow, that, if proposition 1 is seen to be true, then by necessity, proposition 2, then proposition 3, so all the propositions must relate in some way or another. Otherwise, we get into the field of fallacy. Or even if we assume that there's a relation when it's not, of course that's a fallacy, but in modern logic we actually have relations that are pointed out, but in the ancient world it was pretty much assumed that all propositions were in one way or another, in relation to another proposition, and that all the subjects of the proposition were properly done this way or that way. And so, a lot of people dislike ancient logic and all because it's less detailed, but there's a good reason for that. It's just because they didn't really care to write down all the details, because it's pretty much something that is to be assumed. And I'll leave the rest of that for a talk on the organon, but Proposition 3, all that becomes one does so by participation of the unity. For what becomes one is itself not one, but is one inasmuch as it is affected by the participation of unity, since of things which are not in themselves one should become one, they surely do by coming together and by communicating in each other, so as to be subjected to the presence of unity without being unity unqualified, in so much as that they undergo a process of becoming one. They participate in unity, for if they already are one, they can not become one. Nothing can become what it already is. But if from a former not one they become one, the unity must be due to a one which has entered into them. Alright, so this is actually kind of self-explanatory, and I've kind of touched on it a little bit in previous videos, but just so I have some content to give for this little proposition, instead of just talking about directly, I'm just going to give an example in the teacher of St. Augustine, not Ambrose of Milan, but his dialogue teacher. There's a part where they talk about prayer, and when they're talking about prayer, they're discussing whether or not language, according to St. Augustine's proposition, if I remember right, is that language is done to teach someone something or to learn something, and that they were coming up with the problem of whether or not we teach God or if God can learn from us. And that's problematic for things I'm not going to get into on this video, but the important thing is what they said in response to it. The idea was that when someone prays out loud, they're uniting the hearts together. And this is done through the poetic language. So everyone in this particular association that's doing the prayer together is becoming a unity together, and they're so they're participating in this unity and they're becoming one. Then they put their prayer up into the heavens, and by that they are communicating not only with themselves, among themselves, but with God. And okay, I know this is going to trigger a few atheists here, but this is a discussion on the Platonic theology and stuff. It's not a discussion on secular topics, so you're just going to have to assume that there is a God when you're watching this video, because, well, it's theology. It's about the divinity. And so anyway, this itself explains the principle pretty well, I think, but also, when we look at mathematics, I've done a mathematic example before, so I'm just going to do it again. Every time you add two groups of numbers or more, or subtract or divide, whatever process you want, to get the ultimate number as a result, the ultimate number of all these different numbers interacting together, what happens is that all these numbers are interacting and participating in this unity, that the unity itself is this ultimate sum of each of the participating numbers. And this is all the same, and when we are looking at human associations, I've already touched on this a little bit with talking prayer just a second ago, but when we're in a society or working in a group with other people, we often see it's very difficult to work with other people when they are being difficult and they're not working as one. They're not making sure that the cogs of the machine are working well so that activities can get done. And also, when we see an ideal group, all these people who are inside this group are working together in near perfect unison. They are communicating what needs to be communicated. They are doing what needs to be done, and everything. And this all relates because everything that participates ultimately becomes one in the unity, as this proposition which we are talking about goes.